When Adam and Eve were banished from paradise, I was born. With the descendants of Adam and Eve, I was stolen away and thrown into a new world. And in this land I was raised amid the suffering of its people. At times I comforted them. At times I was their downfall. One night I met a man at the station and he gave me my name. From that day and ever after, my name spread like wildfire across the land, and I made many friends. One night I came upon a man standing on a dark street. We grew to know each other well. My name is the Blues, and tonight and every night I go forth to meet my friend. So the story opens up with a young man having a nightmare. He opens the door and what can only be described as evil greets him, and it says, "It's me, I've come for you." Shortly after this moment, the man wakes up gasping in fear, and he's greeted at the door by a woman who tells him that he needs to get up. In the next scene, we can see the man getting karate kicked, told off about his work ethic, and we learn that the man's name is RJ. It appears RJ during the day works as a sharecropper in the fields. Following this, we can see RJ being consoled by the woman that we saw in the beginning scene, and it appears she's his significant other named Virginia. And Virginia is with child. They talk and enjoy each other's company when there's a knock at the door. Thinking back in the dream he had, RJ gets visibly uncomfortable, but a young man greets him at the door, and it appears to be RJ's friend. The man asks if RJ can go out and spend some time at the juke joint together so they can have some fun. Virginia is none too amused, but after some sweet talking by RJ, they get out and they head over to the bar. When they arrive at the bar, there's a man singing some strong blues selections over here that everybody in the crowd seems to thoroughly enjoy. RJ says that he's gonna get up and learn his baby a lullaby. We can see RJ grabbing the guitar, tuning it up, taking a big puff of his cigarette, and he starts wailing away. Shortly after this, it cuts to a scene of most of the patrons of the bar laughing in his face, and a man even buying him a drink as gratitude for getting off the stage. After RJ's pathetic attempt at music, a man at the bar tells him about a rumor that's been going around that RJ should maybe look into. RJ inquires, and the man tells him about a rumor that if you go to the crossroads right before midnight and you bring a guitar or whatever else with you, you can make a deal with the devil where you can take your soul and you will gain playing ability or whatever it is you wish beyond your wild imagination. RJ laughs this off and continues spending the rest of the night at the juke joint with his friends. RJ and what appears to be some of his other family members going to church, where a man is telling them about how gambling, alcohol, fornication, and all these sins will lead one to the path to hell. The man is admonishing those who would sell their soul to the devil for a moment's pleasure and asks them if those in the audience will walk with God to the pearly gates. RJ is seen in the crowd and looking visibly uncomfortable and said it almost reminds him of a scene at the juke joint that he goes to. RJ reminisces on his own life, thinking about how on Saturday he cuts loose at the juke, Sunday he goes to church to wash the sins away, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday he's got nothing but the blues. RJ and Virginia share a moment together as he helps her carry a heavy crock pot when they're once again interrupted by RJ's friend who asks him if he's up for going to juke later on. Virginia can be seen giving the man a steely glaze, but once again him and RJ are off to the bar. This time around, RJ and his friend see a woman at the bar who appears to be giving them the eye. RJ's friend tries his luck, but tells him that the woman is more interested in RJ, and they go out for a little walk in the middle of the night. RJ is seen talking to the woman, and it appears that he's about to cheat on his wife Virginia when all of a sudden something stops him and he hears a guitar off in the distance. RJ looks up and cannot believe his ears. The playing just strikes a chord with him, and it's like nothing he's ever heard before. He walks out on the woman and runs back to the bar. The woman catches up, gets slapped in the face by her husband, and then the husband proceeds to beat RJ's ass as well. Shortly after this, RJ's friend watch RJ gets his ass beat, and they share some words together when RJ asks about the man that was playing blues earlier. RJ's friend tells him that nobody was really paying attention and that the man must have walked out of the show at some point. RJ notices that the man left his guitar, takes it with him, and says he'll go off to find the bluesman because he can't leave his instrument just sitting there. While looking for the wandering bluesman, RJ goes out and he happens to wander upon a crossroads. RJ looks around in multiple directions and begins to hammer out a song on the guitar, strumming wildly and giving it us all while standing right in the middle of the four corners. Shortly after this, RJ keeps moving because he's starting to get creeped out by the scene and continues his walk. RJ begins reminiscing on how he would do anything to be a real bluesman when he all of a sudden becomes exhausted and falls asleep at the crossroads. While sleeping, he has this weird dream of what appears to be a aggressive and evil wild dog, and it wakes him up in the middle of the night. Wakes up thinking that he was going to be eaten. Then he takes a look at the beat up old guitar that he has in his hands, looks up and notices a church that he didn't notice was there before. RJ can be seen walking in the shadow of the cross, and the chapter ends. The story then opens up with RJ telling Virginia about a man that he heard play at the juke joint recently, a man named Son House, who was actually a real life famous bluesman. He tells Virginia about how he wants to be mentored by this man, and if he was able to get his skill, he could learn to be a bluesman in no time flat. Virginia tells him that he has little kid dreams still, and that he should look into being more mature and thinking about a real job and a real future. The two then reminisce on how they initially met, when RJ gave Virginia a bag that he received from the local voodoo woman that's supposed to contain mojo that allows him to get any woman that he wants. A mojo was a talisman or a charm made by voodoo shamans that are supposed to be used to ward off evil spirits or bring good fortune. They open a note and it simply says, "Girl, spread your legs wide for this man." RJ can't believe it, as he was absolutely ripped off and is proceeding to leave. Virginia shortly after this tells RJ that she has no interest in a good-for-nothing daydreamer and that she wants a good church-going man. Shortly after this, RJ can be seen outside of the church window holding up the perverted note. Virginia is absolutely mortified and goes out to kick RJ's ass. When he proceeds to talk to her, tells her that he's going to rip this thing up because he wants to prove to her that he can be a good man. Virginia then grabs RJ and takes him inside the church, and this is presumably where their relationship began. The next scene shows RJ having a conversation with Son House, Willie, another famous blues musician, and they begin to have a conversation about what the blues means. RJ insists that he just needs some lessons, or it must be the technique that's going on. Son House tells him that the blues is something that everybody has within them, and that a bluesman job is to grab hold of it and bring it to life. RJ doesn't really understand this, but he's astounded by the way everybody responds to Son House's music. The next scene showcases RJ spending a great deal of time with Son House. Once again, they have another conversation about what the blues means. RJ is insistent that it's about technique and that it's about how well you can play and how well you can sing. Screaming from the soul and the sorrow of the heart and all that is nonsense, and that the blues is just music. The two get into an argument. RJ throws Son House's guitar and then begins to take a walk outside. RJ appears to be hungover, throws up on top of a gravestone, and can be seen looking out into the distance shortly after, where he gets an old familiar feeling. He keeps hearing something in his ear, and it sounds just like the music that he heard the day that he couldn't find the wandering bluesman. Shortly after this, we're taken to a scene of Son House playing a music gig and lighting up another juke joint. In the corner, a man can be seen tuning the guitar, taking a puff on a cigarette, and he begins playing. Everybody in the juke joint stops what they're doing to look over at who's playing, in awe of the man's ability. And when they all look up, it appears to be RJ, the same RJ who couldn't play a lick of guitar for as long as anybody in that juke joint had known him. But all of a sudden, RJ was playing and the whole bar gets lit up. Son House looks over and smiles, and the two have a guitar battle for the century. Strumming, the whole place is going crazy. Everybody is in awe and looking around. Unbelievably, it looks like RJ is coming out on top. Mitch, RJ's friend, cannot believe his ears. He takes a moment and asks, is that really the RJ that he knows? Because something seems different. Willie talks about RJ's playing and he just can't understand it. Willie states that RJ has the technique down, but it doesn't sound like the blues that he's playing. To him, something's off and it doesn't sound like the real thing. But he notices everybody's reaction to the music and has to admit that he's never heard playing like this, but he wonders how the man got so good. He thinks about how just a little while ago the kid couldn't even hold a guitar, and now he's got the whole bar going crazy. The only thing that makes sense to Willie at this point is that RJ did the unthinkable and actually sold his soul to the devil. All of a sudden, someone enters the bar and kicks RJ directly in the chest. He falls out the chair, and we notice that it's the man and woman that were taking care of RJ at the beginning of the story. The man and woman tell RJ that they've been worried sick about him, and they can't believe that he would just leave for 6 months without telling anybody anything. They thought that he was lynched, or they had no clue what happened to him. RJ looks on in disbelief, saying 6 months? Worried sick, and he's absolutely bewildered. He tells them that he doesn't know what the hell he was talking about, and that he was only gone for 2 or 3 days at the most. The man tells RJ, how could somebody learn to play the guitar the way that he does currently within only 2 or 3 days? RJ knows in his heart that this is absolutely right and thinks on with confusion. The man tells him that it should have been him that died instead of Virginia. RJ looks on completely bewildered and asks him to repeat what he just said. The man tells RJ that Virginia died during childbirth, and both her and the baby didn't make it. RJ is still in complete disbelief, stating that it's only winter and that they had till spring and there were still 4 or 5 months between Virginia was due. They look outside, the man opens the door and shows RJ that it's now June the flowers are beginning to bud, and that what he has said has really come to pass. RJ begins to reminisce on a night where he left for what he believed to be just 2 or 3 days. He thinks about going to that crossroads, he thinks about playing the song, and he thinks about the man that he met whom he informed his desire to learn to play the blues. After this, his mind goes blank. We cut to RJ collapsing in the crowd when he sees a man that he recognizes. It's none other than Sunhouse, the man that he had been following this whole time and had been a big part of his learning in his blues journey. The man looks at RJ and asks him, "Who are you?" Willie says this is the first time he's ever seen him, and Sunhouse reports that he's never met this man at all. He wonders how this man recognizes his face though, and asks him if he heard of him because of stories or rumors, or how exactly he knew who he was. At this point, all RJ can do is laugh. Nothing makes sense anymore, and his whole world has been completely turned upside down. In the next scene, we see RJ paying his respects to Virginia and his baby's grave, and he thinks about how in their eyes, he must be little better than the devil himself. RJ thinks about how Virginia was betrayed by the one person she trusted, taken away from her world without ever having the chance to see her unborn child's face. RJ goes to pay his friend Mitch a visit in the full suit. Mitch asks him how he plans to do farm work and that. Mitch has a weird feeling, and he believes that this may be the last time that he sees RJ. He can't put his finger on it, but something's telling him that. Suddenly, a woman comes out of the house and calls for Mitch to get to work. RJ asks Mitch who this is, and Mitch tells him that he's got a girlfriend now. Mitch offers for RJ to stay with him at their home, but RJ doesn't want to be a bother and says that he's going to go and hit the road. Mitch's assumption was right, and RJ begins to think about how he's going to say farewell to this land, and he's going to pick up and go for a while and go play the blues at various different places. Mitch sees RJ walking away and notices that he's talking with somebody. Mitch goes to get closer and take a look to find out who RJ is having a conversation with when he's surprised by RJ's family member Bessie staring out at him as well. Mitch asks who it was that RJ was talking to while he was walking. Bessie tells Mitch that he wasn't walking with anybody and that she watched him go off all on his own. She coldly states that no matter where that fool goes, he'll always be alone, now and forever. Mitch sits confused, wondering what he saw, but thinks that his eyes must have been playing tricks on him. RJ hits the road, stating that today the devil and him start out on their journey. In the next scene, we're greeted by a man and a woman driving in a car together. The woman applies lipstick while the man looks at himself in her pocket mirror adjusting his hair. All of a sudden, there's a bullet hole in the windshield, and we see the two erratically grasping for weapons and trying to fire back. It appears that the woman is shot. The man attempts to fire back when he looks at his weapon and sees a thumb pick sitting around the hammer. He says, "Rat bastard, that's his thumb pick," and the next thing we know, the car is completely lit up by gunshots and bullets, with both the man and the woman dead. In the next scene, we see RJ having a conversation with someone whom he calls the devil, and he tells him that he's thankful for what he's done for him. The man asks who RJ is calling the devil and says that his name is Ike. Ike tells RJ that it ain't his fault that his old lady died, and he says the only reason that RJ's so good at the guitar is because of how hard he practiced. RJ asks the man what's he gonna do with him now. The man follows up with a smirk, asking RJ, isn't he the one that's following him? In the next scene, we see Ike and RJ sitting at a tree playing the blues. A boy looks out at him when RJ inquires what's the boy's problem and asks him why is he staring at him like that. The child is quickly grasped by what appears to be his mother, told not to stare, and the woman shoots a steely glance at RJ before walking away. While on the road walking, RJ is almost run over by a speeding vehicle. Within the vehicle, a man is appearing to have a struggle with another older man, who he puts a gun to the old man's temple and then pushes him off the vehicle as he speeds away. Next, we cut to the man in a wooded area recovering after crashing the car into a tree. The man gets out of the car because he hears what he can only describe as screaming. He's next to a graveyard when he hears something, but gets back into the vehicle after stating that the sound is giving him the creeps. Cut to RJ in a public venue playing for a crowd who's listening to his blues. He and Ike are sitting together playing in a duet. Ike says that he's going to get up to use the restroom, so RJ begins playing by himself, and he's surprised at his ability to maintain the crowd's attention even while playing alone. The man we saw in the previous scene comes up and asks RJ what it is that he's playing. The man asks RJ if he happens to play out in the middle of the night in a graveyard. Surprised, RJ says yes, and that he goes out here to practice because this is one of the most convenient places to do so, since most people aren't at a graveyard in the middle of the night. The man, somewhat relieved, takes a look at the bottleneck that RJ is using to play and says that he found his ghost. The man then commands RJ to get in the car. RJ is rightly nervous about this. RJ is in the middle of the South and a white man's asking him to get into a vehicle with him, and he decides what he should do in this moment. Should he run away? Should he pretend to be dumb? The biggest fear he has on his mind at this point is that he could potentially be getting lynched because of this guy. But the man doesn't take no for an answer, tells RJ to put his guitar in the back, and once again commands him to get in. RJ attempts to tell the man that he's waiting for someone, but the man tells him that he doesn't care and to get in the damn car. RJ does, and before they drive off, the man tells RJ that his name is Clyde Barrow. And while driving off, he asks RJ if he believes in ghosts. RJ tells him that he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he does believe in the devil. Hearing this, Clyde can only tell RJ that he's scaring him a bit, and the two drive off. The story begins with a young RJ looking up at a black man who has been lynched in a tree. An older woman tells RJ not to look, but we can see a young RJ staring up with bewildered eyes. Then we cut back to RJ in the car with Clyde Barrow. Clyde asks RJ if he's hungry. RJ replies that he is, but he doesn't have any money. Clyde tells him that he can get all that he wants to eat and drink here and tells him to wait inside the vehicle. Clyde has RJ get out of the car, and they're greeted by a large white man who tells RJ that Clyde told him that he can play the guitar. The man tells RJ that he's heard a lot of people play before, but he's going to give him a chance to go ahead and play a song. RJ plays for the man briefly, and then they have him go out to his backyard for entertainment so the rest of the crowd can listen to RJ's music. While playing, RJ notices that Clyde tells the man that his name is John and wonders what's going on. Nervously, RJ continues playing. A man asks RJ to play some country music because he can't dance to RJ's Negro music, of course. RJ tells the man that he's never played this kind of music before, but all of a sudden, his hands, without even thinking about it, begin to play some country music and make country sounds. RJ is in disbelief, but he continues playing as it seems like the safest thing for him to do. The next scene we cut to, we see Clyde filling his pockets and a briefcase up with jewelry. Also during this moment, we see a man and a woman getting intimate. Shortly after this, RJ begins to stop playing, shake uncontrollably, and falls to the ground. The man asks RJ if he's having a fit, tells him that no sick Negroes are going to be working here, and he walks off to see if he can find Clyde. And the man and the woman seen previously are visibly getting nervous as they hear the old man walking up the stairs. Clyde notices that the music has stopped as well, and he begins to work to try to figure out a plan on what to do. Clyde walks into the room with the naked man and the woman and stops. The man runs upstairs, notices that he has a great deal of jewelry missing, and begins his hunt for John, aka Clyde. Clyde attempts to escape out a window when he's greeted by a shotgun directly to his face. We cut back to RJ, who is outside panting, and we notice that he has 10 fingers on one hand. Now in this scene, things go foobar. The man tells Clyde that they have a policy on thieves where he's from, and that for every dollar amount stolen, the thief must give up a pound of flesh. Clyde, thinking that he doesn't want to be giving up any pounds of flesh anytime soon, asks the man what he would do if he found out somebody was sleeping with his daughter. The man states that he would first begin by castrating the person, and then they'd go from there. Clyde shifts his body language and has the man look inside. The man goes off the deep end and aims a shotgun at the nude man waiting inside, who appears to be named George, calling him a traitor for going after his own wife. So apparently, the dude's nephew was sleeping with his wife. Clyde takes this opportunity to smack the old man in the back of the head with the butt of the gun. Clyde offers for the woman to come with him, telling her how she can't be satisfied having to pleasure this old man and that there's gotta be things she wants to do with her life. The woman asks why she would want to go with a no-good thief like Clyde. He laughs at her, says good point, and proceeds to make his escape. George and the woman, who we learn's name is Amy, have a conversation. Amy asks George if she should kill the old man. George is surprised, but states that if they were to do so, they could blame it all on Clyde, and that they would be the one to gain the old man's inheritance, so it might be the best decision. And right before Amy can fire and make the killing shot, some of the old man's supporters walk in and notice Amy with the firearm. Amy is unable to talk her way out of this, so she shoots one of the men that saw her. When all of a sudden the old man wakes up, tells them to grab George and also to grab that no good dirty whore of a wife of his. The old man is unable to reconcile her betrayal and tells everyone of Amy's plot to kill him as well. Clyde gathers up RJ and the two scoot off in a stolen vehicle. Amy begins to laugh, presumably at the ridiculousness of the situation, when the old man tells her that she is not allowed to laugh without his permission. Amy continues laughing. The old man gets more pissed, draws his weapon, and then shoots her. The scene ends with the body of the dead woman and Clyde laughing as he and RJ ride off into the distance. In the next chapter, Clyde and RJ go off into the woods and talk about what just transpired at that plantation. Clyde asks RJ to play a song for him on the guitar, As a celebration, RJ looks down at his hand with 10 fingers and thinks that there's no way that he can play in front of him right now and what this could potentially lead to, thinking how he could potentially call him evil, say that he was possessed, and shoot him right there on the spot. So he decides the best thing that he can do is attempt to avoid the question. Clyde begins growing more and more frustrated at RJ seemingly ignoring his request. Suddenly, Clyde asks RJ if he's ever seen a shotgun. Clyde talks about how shotgun shells are something else and they can easily blow a man's head into 1,000 pieces. Clyde then tells RJ that he had one of those shoved in his face and almost got his head blown off because RJ stopped playing. Clyde asks RJ to explain himself and why he stopped playing at that plantation. RJ can't bring himself to say anything and just sits there in silence. Clyde goes steadily more angry until all of a sudden he picks up a rock and throws it at RJ's shoulder. Clyde negotiates one last time after hitting RJ with a rock, telling RJ that they made a good haul from thieving and have themselves a good new car, so the perfect end to the night would be RJ's playing. And he asks him to get his guitar one last time. RJ thinks about it and decides to go to the car to get his instrument. In his mind at this point, he figures he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't do anything, Clyde is just going to grow more and more unhinged, get angry, and shoot him. And if he does show him, he feels like he's going to get shot anyway after he sees his hand. So what's the point? He might as well get up and go. RJ briefly thinks about potentially killing Clyde while they're sitting out there in the woods alone. RJ thinks about how there's no white or black when you're in the woods alone like this, and that if he were to kill him like this when nobody was around, no one would ever find out, and this might be the perfect plan so that he escapes with his life. Clyde instinctively picks up on RJ's plan, is disappointed in RJ for not being more fun, and begins to cock his weapon. In a matter of seconds, he has his gun pointed at RJ when all of a sudden he notices that RJ is playing. Clyde grows angry at RJ for playing with his back towards him, and he asks him who he thinks that he is. RJ isn't even listening to what Clyde has to say, because at this point in time, he's the happiest he's ever been. He's unsure why this crazy right hand of his is able to make the guitar sing like it's never been able to before, and states that this is better than anything he could have dreamed. All RJ can think about is how he wants to be able to continue to play, and how he wants this moment to never go away. RJ thinks about how he now has the ability to play whatever pops into his head. He's always thought about these sounds, but never had the technical ability or the rhythm or the technique to actually be able to play. RJ is ecstatic at the fact that he now only has to let his right hand go crazy, and he can play whatever music pops into his imagination. Clyde suddenly begins having flashbacks of a young woman, and he asks RJ if he's ever loved someone. RJ tells Clyde that he has. Clyde reminisces and tells RJ that of course he can, because the only way that you'd be able to play something like that is if you experience love too. RJ agrees, but thinks in his head that, in all honesty, he wasn't thinking about Virginia at all while he was playing. He was only thinking about the music and what he wanted to do next. Clyde asks RJ to write a song for his lady, to write a song for Bonnie. RJ agrees and plays this song for Clyde all throughout the night. At some point, Clyde asks RJ, what are the blues? RJ tells him that it's just music, or at least that's what he thought at first. But then he tells him the answer that he learned from Son House, that the blues is something that lies in the hearts of all men, and that all bluesmen do is bring it out. And he tells Clyde that this is at least what another bluesman had told him. Clyde says that he doesn't much get it, and RJ says that to be honest, he still really doesn't get it himself. RJ states that from his experience, it's not really something that you get to choose. RJ states that for him, the blues is something that he can't really run away from, because without it, it wouldn't be him. Clyde thinks on this while and pulls out a coin, and he says that it's like the two sides of a coin, that you can't have one without the other. Clyde asks RJ if he's got that right. RJ's confused, but says, yeah, you got it. And then Clyde states that in his case, he guessed that his blues would be his gun. And Clyde feels that the gun, his weapon, is the thing that he needs for all of his dreams to come true. RJ grows somber and tells Clyde that the bigger your dreams are, the bigger the price. Thinking about what he just said, RJ asks Clyde to forgive him and that he didn't mean to be forward or come off as smart, because he's still a black man talking to a white man. Clyde tells RJ that no, he's absolutely right, and asks RJ to play the song for Bonnie, the Bonnie Blues, one more time. RJ thinks that he's finally going to be able to make it out of this situation when Clyde asks RJ to come with him for one more job. RJ, wishing he could go home, nervously agrees because he feels that this is his only chance to survive this. Suddenly, RJ looks up and notices a knocked out Clyde. Shortly after seeing the passed out Clyde, we notice a group of men surrounding RJ. For a brief moment, we see RJ's hat go flying, and we cut to the next chapter. The next scene begins when Clyde is regaining consciousness. After a brief moment, he remembers what happened and thinks about how he saw RJ get hit with a shovel, then he was next. The second thing he notices is that RJ's gone, nowhere to be found, but they kept all of the belongings there. Clyde wonders why they would just take a single black man and nothing else, and begins to think to himself that it may have been the KKK, and if so, RJ's screwed. At this point, Clyde is thinking about just leaving town and going about his business, but then Clyde goes angry, wondering if he could really consider himself a gangster if he allowed those farmers to go mess with him and then just get away with it like it's that easy. We cut to a scene of Clyde growing intensely angry, biting on the wood grain of a steering wheel with a crazed look in his eye. Then he suddenly calms down, states that he's parched, and then drives off. In the next scene, we see Clyde pulling up into a bar at a small town and orders a Coca-Cola. He notices a man looking over at him and asks him if the man's judging him for only ordering a Coke, despite the bar serving alcohol that's rarely available within the Prohibition era. Shortly after this, a group of farmers come in and attempt to order alcohol. The men come in and are immediately rude, insulting Clyde for ordering a Coca-Cola and asking the bartender for whatever booze they can provide. The next moment, the men can be seen spitting out the booze that was just given to him. They grab the bartender and ask him what the hell is wrong with the alcohol that he's serving. The moment that the man grasps the bartender's collar, a group of men surrounding him pull out shotguns and weapons and have them all pointed towards them. They are shortly after this immediately kicked out of the bar. A small boy can be seen laughing at them, standing next to Clyde's stolen vehicle. He tells the men that they are fools for ordering alcohol, in this town especially, and that those who order alcohol in this town get the death penalty, and that they're lucky to be alive. The men drive off, scared out of their wits, while those in the bar in hysterics laughing at them. Clyde has a conversation with the man at the bar who was staring at him earlier. The man tells him that the men were served tea, and that those in this town do not believe in alcohol whatsoever. They feel that alcohol is the work of the devil, and that anybody found drinking it can't be good and deserves nothing but the death penalty. That's why they were impressed with Clyde when he came in and ordered only a Coca-Cola, and they tell Clyde that he is welcome there whenever he wants. The man reveals that his name is Stanley O. McDonald, and that if he wants anything in this town, that he's his man. We also get a brief look at Stanley's eyes in this moment, and he appears to be blind. In the next scene, we see a beat up RJ sitting in a jail cell, with the sheriff and other members of the town talking about the farmers who gathered him up really put a number on him. In the next scene, we cut to a man and the young boy that was seen outside of the bar admiring Clyde's Ford V8. The boy looks inside the vehicle and notices a guitar case. Clyde can be seen in the bar still having a conversation with Stanley O. McDonald. Clyde tells Stanley that he's a news reporter that came in from Texas, and that his name is Roy. The man who was outside looking at Clyde's car previously tells him that he has a nice vehicle for a newspaper man. He also asks Clyde why he has a guitar in the back of his vehicle. Clyde nervously and hurriedly tries to think of a response. He wonders if this man is connected to those farmers who attacked him, and what they would do if they find out that he was the white man connected to the Negro that they kidnapped, and what they would do to a white man who spends time with a black man in this kind of town. Clyde thinks about the possibilities, thinking that he could maybe tell the man that it's his guitar, but then he'd be asked to play it. Or maybe he could tell him that he just found it, but who's going to believe that he just found a guitar, and why would he just pick it up like that? Clyde decides that the best thing he can do is just play dumb about it and pretends that he knows nothing about a guitar in the back of his vehicle. Clyde asks the man if he's the one that maybe threw it in the back of his car because he knows nothing about it. The man grows angry, tells Clyde to quit playing dumb, when all of a sudden the argument is broken up by the young boy coming in saying that there is no guitar in the car. The blind man holds on to the young child's head and asks the older man if he is calling the young boy Toby a liar. The older man grows extremely nervous and says no, he would never do that, but he's going to go back to the car and double check. The man once again looks inside Clyde's vehicle, but to his amazement, there really is no guitar. Clyde himself is surprised at this and wonders what happens to the guitar that was in his vehicle. But Clyde plays along because it's in his best interest and tells the man that he's peculiar, but states that no harm is done since it really wasn't that big of a deal. In an instant, Stanley begins mercilessly beating the man, reprimanding him for being so rude to Clyde, as well as calling the young Toby a liar. Throughout this encounter, Clyde notices pictures of lynchings that have occurred strewn all throughout the bar. Stanley tells Clyde that there's going to be a little event coming up. Clyde inquires further, but he has a feeling he knows where this is going. The man informs him that there will be a lynching coming up. Stanley tells Clyde that they have a little town without much going on, so lynchings are considered something of a little mini festival, He reminisces with Clyde about lynchings that he's participated in earlier in his life, and the young Toby shows pictures of his involvement in the lynchings as well, stating that he wants to get the liver the next time somebody's killed so he can feed it to his dog. Clyde asks the man what the Negro that he's caught has done, and Stanley looks at him with a quizzical look, asking him, do you really need a reason to kill a Negro? Next, we cut back to RJ, who is still badly beaten within the cell. The men go into the cell to see if RJ has any money on him, and what they find after stripping him of his belongings is a flask full of alcohol. In the next scene, we see that the men in town are hypocrites, and they all begin taking a swig of the alcohol that they were just previously stating was completely banned in town and that anybody that drinks would be killed. One of the men notices after turning RJ over something strange about his hand. After looking further, the man grows erratic and states that RJ has 10 fingers on one hand. In disbelief, he brings the other men to come look, and they notice this as well. At first, they are going to let this go until the morning before telling Stanley because they feel like this is something that he should know. One of the men asks the rest how they could be so calm, stating that he can't put his finger on it, but there's something strange about RJ. He senses an evil presence. It's hard to describe, but it's truly what it is. While looking outside, the men notice that Stanley McDonald is on his way in. Clyde offered to give Stanley a ride, thinking that this might be a good time to gather more information. While getting ready to head in, the men hide the booze that they previously drank, and one of the men immediately blurts out that RJ has 10 fingers. Mr. McDonald is intrigued by this and goes inside the jail cell to learn more. The men tell Stanley that RJ does indeed have 10 fingers on one hand, but he reprimands them, asking them how they expect him to know because he can't see, and do they really expect him to get down and touch a Negro's hand? So what he does is he has his boy Toby go and look at RJ's hand. He will be his eyes. And in the next moment, something strange happens. The boy attempts to count the fingers on RJ's hands, but they begin contorting and twisting. Sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 10. And then all of a sudden, RJ grows a whole nother hand. The boy is absolutely confused, but then in the next moment he looks and RJ's hand is completely normal. At this point, the boy doesn't know what he's seeing, what's real and what's fake. And in the final moment of Volume 1, we see a hand grabbing the boy in the shoulder. And then the scene fades to black. Thank you all so much for sticking around for this first volume of Me and the Devil Blues. If you made it all the way through the video, please take some time and hit my YouTube buttons. And if you don't mind, think about potentially contributing to the Patreon and the Ko-fi. Proceeds go to improving the channel and paying for things like editing in order to bring you guys high quality videos and content. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys soon.